When my daughter told her children that I was poor now and they shouldn't ask me for anything, I smiled, nodded, and drove home in silence. By morning, I had made one phone call that would change everything. 40 years of financial wisdom doesn't disappear overnight, and neither does a grandfather's love or his ability to teach important lessons about respect. What happened next shocked everyone, especially my daughter. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. Grandpa is poor now, so don't ask him for anything. My daughter Sarah whispered to my grandchildren as I approached their backyard. She thought I couldn't hear her, but at 68, my hearing was still excellent, and like my relationship with my only daughter. The words stung as I stood there with 3 birthday gifts tucked under my arm, watching the excitement drain from my grandchildren's faces. "I heard that," I said, forcing a smile as I stepped onto their patio. Sarah's face flushed red, but she quickly composed herself, brushing invisible dust from her designer jeans. "Dad, I was just explaining to the kids that you're adjusting to retirement," she said, her voice honeyed but eyes cold. "We don't want them bothering you for things right now." 10-year-old Emma, 8-year-old Jake, and 6-year-old Lily looked at me with confusion. Just last month, I'd taken them for ice cream and to the science museum. Last Christmas, I'd given them each savings bonds and special gifts. Nothing extravagant, but certainly not the actions of a destitute man. "Well, I'm glad I'm here to set the record straight," I replied, keeping my voice light for the children's sake. "I brought birthday presents for Jake. 8 is a big year, buddy." My grandson approached cautiously, glancing at his mother as if seeking permission. Sarah gave a tight nod, and Jake took the wrapped packages from my arms. "Thanks, Grandpa," he said quietly. Sarah's husband Brian appeared from inside their sprawling 2-story suburban home, the same home I'd helped them buy with a $75,000 down payment 5 years ago. "Richard, didn't know you were coming by today," he called, his surprise clearly genuine. "It's Jake's birthday. I wouldn't miss it," I said simply. Brian had the decency to look embarrassed. Of course. Come on in, we're just setting up for the party." As I followed them inside, I couldn't help but notice how much had changed since my last visit. New furniture in the living room, an expanded kitchen with marble countertops, and through the windows, I could see workers installing what appeared to be an in-ground pool in the backyard. "Business must be good," I commented as Brian handed me a beer. "Can't complain," he said with a shrug. "The investment group is expanding. We're opening to new offices next month." The investment group that I had helped fund with $50,000 of my retirement savings 3 years ago, with the promise of being made whole once they turned a profit. I was still waiting for that return, despite Brian's new Lexus parked in the driveway. Sarah busied herself arranging an elaborate spread of catered food on their new dining table. "Dad, we didn't expect you until the party at 4. It's only 2 now. I thought I could help set up," I offered. "Or maybe take the kids to the park while you prepare." "Oh, that's not necessary," Sarah said quickly. "The kids have homework to finish before their friends arrive." Emma looked up from her tablet. "I don't have any homework, Mom." Sarah shot her daughter a look that silenced her immediately. "Why don't you show Emma, Jake, and Lily what you brought them, Dad? Then maybe you could run to the store for more." Ice were short. I recognized the dismissal for what it was, an errand to get me out of the way. Still, I smiled and motioned for the kids to follow me to the living room. "Here you go, birthday boy," I said, handing Jake the largest package. He tore into it eagerly, revealing a telescope I'd carefully selected. "Wow, a real telescope," he exclaimed, momentarily forgetting his mother's warning. "We can set it up tonight if your parents agree," I said. "There's supposed to be a meteor shower." I handed smaller packages to Emma and Lily, books for Emma, who loved to read, and a stuffed puppy for Lily that looked like my old dog Max, whom she had adored before he passed away last year. "Thanks, Grandpa," they said in unison, but their enthusiasm was muted, eyes darting toward the kitchen where Sarah was watching. "Dad," Sarah called. "About that ice." I nodded, understanding my place. "I'll be back soon, kiddos." As I drove to the store, the words echoed in my head. Grandpa is poor now. Where had my daughter gotten that idea? Yes, I'd retired from my position as Chief Financial Officer at Anderson Manufacturing last year, after 4 decades. Yes, I'd downsized from my 4-bedroom house to a comfortable 2-bedroom condo after Clara passed away 2 years ago. And yes, I'd mentioned being more careful with expenses recently after realizing how much money I'd given to Sarah and Brian over the years without seeing a dime returned. But poor. Far from it. I had a healthy retirement account, investments that had performed well, and a pension that provided more than enough for my modest lifestyle. What I didn't have was the desire to continue funding Sarah and Brian's increasingly lavish lifestyle while being treated like an ATM with no feelings. By the time I returned with the ice, guests were already arriving. Parents dropped off children, while a few neighbors and family friends stayed, mingling in the backyard where a bounce house and hired entertainers were setting up. I estimated the cost of this party at several $1,000s. Far more than the simple celebrations Sarah had enjoyed growing up. Just put the ice in the coolers, Sarah instructed, barely looking up from her conversation with another mother. I did as asked, then found a seat in the corner of the yard, watching my grandchildren interact with their friends. Throughout the afternoon, I was introduced to no one. When dinner was served, I noticed there wasn't a place set for me at the main table. When the birthday cake appeared, an elaborate two-tier creation with a hand-painted superhero design, I stood in the back, singing along but feeling utterly invisible. As Jake opened presents, I watched Sarah and Brian exchange glances. When my gifts were revealed, Brian leaned over to Sarah, whispering something that made her nod in agreement. Later, I overheard snippets of their conversation near the drinks table. Double quotes. Told you he'd bring something old-fashioned. Double quotes. Probably got it on clearance. Embarrassing next to the PlayStation. I clutched my plastic cup tighter, remembering how I'd spent hours researching telescopes, wanting to foster Jake's interest in science with something that would last longer than the latest video game console. As the party wound down, I helped clean up while Sarah and Brian said goodbye to the remaining guests. When only family remained, I approached Sarah. The party was wonderful. Jake seemed happy. She smiled tightly. Yes, well, we wanted to do something special. I noticed the pool construction. That's quite an undertaking. Something flickered across her face. Defensiveness, perhaps. Brian's bonus came through. We decided to invest in the property. I see. And the new furniture. The kitchen remodel. Sarah's smile hardened. Dad, our finances aren't really your concern. We're doing fine. I'm glad to hear it. Does that mean you'll be repaying the loans soon? The pleasant mask slipped entirely. Loans, Dad, those were gifts. You never said anything about repayment. The $75,000 for the down payment was clearly a loan. We signed papers. That was years ago. And everything else, the money for Brian's business, for the kids' private school tuition last year when we were short, you offered those. You never mentioned paying you back. I nodded slowly. You're right, I didn't. Because I thought my daughter would understand the difference between gifts and taking advantage of her father. Sarah's face flushed. Is that what this is about? You're keeping score, counting every penny you've given us. No, Sarah. I'm counting the times you've treated me like I don't matter. Like today, when you told my grandchildren I was poor so they wouldn't ask me for anything. She had the grace to look embarrassed, but only briefly. I was trying to protect you. You're always complaining about money lately. I've mentioned being more careful with my giving, yes, because I realized it was creating a pattern that wasn't healthy for any of us. Brian approached, slipping his arm around Sarah's waist. Everything okay here? My father thinks we owe him money, Sarah said coldly. Brian's expression hardened. Richard, we appreciate everything you've done for us, but we're not in a position to repay anything right now. The business is expanding. The new house expenses, the pool, the furniture, the luxury cars. I finished for him. Brian straightened. I work hard for what we have. So did I, for 40 years. And I was happy to share the fruits of that labor with my family. What I wasn't prepared for was being treated like an embarrassment once you decided I had nothing left to offer. Sarah's eyes welled with tears, whether from genuine emotion or frustration. I couldn't tell. Dad, that's not fair. What's not fair is telling your children their grandfather is poor, when the truth is, you're just afraid I've closed the bank of Dad. I reached into my pocket and pulled out an envelope. This was supposed to be for Jake's college fund. I've been contributing to accounts for each of the kids since they were born. But given your concern about my finances, perhaps you'd better manage it instead. I placed the envelope on the table and turned to leave. Dad, wait, Sarah called, but I continued walking. As I reached my car, Emma ran out to the driveway. Grandpa, Are you really poor now? I knelt down to her level. No, sweetheart. I have everything I need. Sometimes adults get confused about what being rich or poor really means. Mom said we shouldn't ask you for stuff anymore. You can always ask me for anything, Emma. A listening ear, a story, help with homework, or just time together. Those are the most valuable things I can give you. She threw her arms around my neck. Can we still use the telescope tonight? I hugged her back, fighting the lump in my throat. I'd like that very much. Ask your parents if it's okay for me to come back after dinner. As I drove home to my comfortable but modest condo, I made a decision. It was time for things to change. Not out of vengeance, but out of love, tough love, the kind that teaches respect and consequences. My grandchildren deserved to understand the true value of family. And my daughter needed to remember the lessons I thought I'd taught her long ago. That night, I made one phone call to my longtime friend and attorney, Robert Maxwell. It was time to review my financial commitments, establish clear boundaries, and ensure my legacy would truly benefit those who valued it. I pulled into my driveway feeling lighter than I had in years. As promised, I would return later to set up Jake's telescope. But in the meantime, I had important work to do. Work that would change everything. The documents spread across my kitchen table told a story in numbers and signatures of history of financial support I'd provided to Sarah and Brian. The $75,000 down payment for their house had come with a promissory note and repayment schedule they'd signed and then apparently forgotten. The $50,000 investment in Brian's business venture had been structured as a loan with favorable terms, not a gift. The $24,000 I'd provided for private school tuition last year when they claimed cash flow problems. The $35,000 for Sarah's emergency credit card debt from 3 years ago. All told, they owed me nearly $200,000. Not counting the smaller handouts, vacations I'd funded, cars I'd helped purchase, holidays and birthdays where I'd been excessive. In my generosity, I'd never expected to call in these debts. They were my safety net for my daughter and her family insurance that they'd never truly struggle. But as I reviewed my bank statements and their empty promises, I realized I'd enabled a pattern of entitlement that now extended to my grandchildren. Grandpa is poor now, so don't ask him for anything. The words still stung, not because of what they said about my financial status, but because of what they revealed about how my daughter saw me as nothing more than a financial resource. I reached for the phone and dialed Robert's number. After exchanging brief pleasantries, I got straight to the point. Robert, I need to make some changes to my estate plan and address some outstanding family loans. Everything okay, Richard? He asked, concern evident in his voice. We'd been friends since college, and he'd handled my legal affairs for decades. It will be, I assured him. I've been too generous without accountability, and it's created some unhealthy dynamics. I need to course correct. I understand completely. What are you thinking? First, I want to formally call due the promissory note on Sarah and Brian's house down payment. Give them reasonable terms, 90 days to start repayment or refinance. Robert was silent for a moment. That's a significant step, Richard. Are you sure? I am. I also want to restructure my estate. Instead of Sarah being my primary beneficiary, I want to create educational trusts for my grandchildren that can't be accessed by their parents. And I want to explore options for how to handle the business loan to Brian. What prompted this? Robert asked gently. I know things have been strained since Clara passed, but this seems sudden. I explained the day's events, the dismissive treatment, the comments to my grandchildren, the obvious luxury purchases while my loans remained unpaid. As I spoke, I realized how long I'd allowed this disrespect to continue, making excuses for Sarah's behavior as grief over losing her mother or stress from raising 3 children. I'm not doing this to punish them, Robert. I'm doing it because continuing as we are isn't good for any of us. Sarah needs to remember the values Clara and I raised her with. My grandchildren deserve better examples. I understand, Robert said. I'll draw up the papers tomorrow. But Richard, be prepared, this won't be received well. I know, but sometimes the right decisions aren't the easy ones. After we hung up, I sat quietly with my thoughts. The telescope waited by the door for my evening with Jake. Despite everything, I was looking forward to sharing his excitement as we gazed at the stars together. Some things were more valuable than money: respect, integrity, and the wonder in a child's eyes. Those were the true gifts I wanted to pass on. At precisely 7:30 p.m., I pulled back into Sarah and Brian's driveway with the telescope. The house was lit up, and I could see movement behind the curtains. I took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell, uncertain of my reception after our earlier conversation. Brian answered, his expression guarded but not hostile. "Richard, Emma said you were coming back for the telescope thing. If that's still okay," I said. "It's a good night for stargazing." He hesitated, then stepped aside. "Jake's been talking about it all evening." I entered cautiously, noting the birthday decorations still hanging from the ceiling. The house was quieter now, the party mess cleaned up. From the family room, I could hear the children's voices. "Grandpa's here?" Jake called out, spotting me first. He ran over, excitement replacing the earlier caution. "Can we set it up now? Mom said we could stay up late since there's no school tomorrow." "Absolutely," I said, ruffling his hair. "Where's your mom?" "Kitchen," Emma supplied. Not looking up from her book, the one I'd given her earlier. I found Sarah loading the dishwasher, her back to me. "The kids are excited about the telescope," I said by way of greeting. She turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "They haven't stopped talking about it." "Sarah, about earlier," she held up a hand. "Not now, Dad. It's still Jake's birthday. Let's not ruin it with another discussion." Her use of the word another stung, implying I was the one who had created problems, but I nodded, unwilling to escalate tensions with my grandchildren nearby. "The backyard would be best for setting up," I suggested. "Away from the streetlights." "Fine," she said. "I'll bring out some hot chocolate in a bit." It wasn't forgiveness or understanding, but it was an olive branch of sorts. I'd take it, for now. The next few hours were among the best I'd had in years. Jake proved to be a natural with the telescope, quickly grasping how to find the moon and locate several constellations. Emma brought out her new astronomy book, helping us identify what we were seeing. Even little Lily joined us, though she spent most of the time curled in my lap, asking questions about whether stars had feelings. Sarah brought hot chocolate as promised, then lingered at the edge of our circle, watching silently. When Brian joined us later, he seemed genuinely impressed with the telescope's quality. "This is a serious piece of equipment," he commented, taking his turn, looking at Jupiter. "It should last for many years," I said. The implication clear, unlike the expensive electronic toys that would be obsolete in months. By the time we packed up, it was nearly 10:30 p.m. The children were drowsy, but happy, reluctant to end our stargazing session. "Can we do this again tomorrow, Grandpa?" Jake asked. Before I could answer, Sarah stepped in. "Grandpa might be busy, Jake. Remember, he has his own life." "Actually," I said, meeting her eyes directly, "I'm free tomorrow evening. And the next night too, if you'd like." Something flickered across Sarah's face, annoyance, confusion, or perhaps recognition that she couldn't easily dismiss me anymore. "We'll see," she said, commit a lie. As I prepared to leave. Sarah followed me to the door while Brian took the children upstairs to bed. "Dad," she began, her voice lower, "about what you said earlier, regarding the money, we can discuss it another time," I said, echoing her earlier deflection. "It's still Jake's birthday, after all." She frowned, clearly unhappy to have her words turn back on her. "I just want to be clear that we never intended, intentions and actions are different things, Sarah. We'll talk soon." I stepped outside, then turned back. "Thank you for letting me share the telescope with the kids tonight. It meant a lot to me." The mixture of emotions on her face was complex: frustration, confusion, perhaps a hint of shame. Good, reflection, was the beginning of growth. "Good night, Sarah," I said, and walked to my car. As I drove home, I felt a strange sense of peace. The first steps had been taken: the call to Robert, the boundary clearly drawn. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight had reminded me of what was truly at stake: my relationship with my grandchildren and the values I hoped they would carry forward. 3 days later, the certified letter from Robert's office would arrive at Sarah and Brian's home, but that was still to come. For now, I had the memory of 3 children's faces, lit by starlight and wonder, to carry me through what lay ahead. The first sign that my plan was having an effect came with a phone call from Brian the day after the certified letter arrived. His voice held none of the casual confidence that typically characterized our interactions. "Richard," he began, formal and tense, "we received some kind of legal notice about the house down payment. There must be a mistake." "No mistake, Brian," I replied calmly. "Just the terms we agreed to 5 years ago when I provided the funds. but this says we need to begin repayment immediately or refinance to return the principal. That's correct. The grace period was generous 5 years interest-free. That period has ended. There was a long pause. Then, is this because of what happened at Jake's birthday? Sarah didn't mean anything by it. This isn't punishment, Brian, it's accountability. The agreement always included repayment terms. I've simply decided it's time to enforce them. Richard, be reasonable. We can't come up with $75,000 in 90 days. The business expansion, the pool installation, those were choices you made while knowing you had this financial obligation. Perhaps it's time to reevaluate your priorities. His tone shifted from disbelief to anger. I thought family helped. Family. I never expected my father-in-law to act like some kind of predatory lender. The accusation was both hurtful and revealing. Family does help family, Brian. I've been helping you and Sarah for years, but family also respects family, which includes honoring financial commitments and not telling children their grandfather is poor, so they won't ask him for anything. Another long silence followed. Sarah's upset, he finally said. She thinks you're trying to punish her for something she said without thinking. I'm sorry she sees it that way. This isn't about punishment. It's about resetting our relationship on healthier terms. By threatening our home. I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply asking you to honor an agreement you signed. If that's not possible, we can discuss alternatives. What alternatives? His voice held cautious hope. We should talk in person. All of us. Perhaps dinner at my place this weekend. Brian agreed reluctantly, and we set a time for Saturday evening. As I hung up, I knew the real work was just beginning. This conversation had been difficult, but it was merely the opening move in a longer game, one where the stakes were my relationship with my daughter and her family. The next few days passed slowly. I heard nothing from Sarah directly, though Emma called once to tell me about a science project she was working on. The easy way she chatted suggested she, at least, was unaware of the tension between the adults. I was grateful for that small mercy. By Saturday, I had prepared both my home and myself for what would likely be a challenging evening. I'd cooked Clara's famous lasagna, Sarah's favorite growing up, and set the dining room table with care. On the sideboard lay several folders containing financial documents, but also photo albums and mementos I'd carefully selected. At precisely 6 o'clock, the doorbell rang. I took a deep breath and opened the door to find Sarah, Brian, and to my surprise, all 3 children. We hope it's okay that we brought the kids, Sarah said stiffly. Our sitter canceled last minute. It was a transparent excuse. They likely thought I'd be less confrontational with the children present, but I smiled and welcomed them in. Of course, I made plenty of food, and I'm always happy to see my grandchildren. The children rushed past their parents to greet me. Little Lily wrapped her arms around my legs, while Jake immediately asked if we could use the telescope again. Later, Emma, perceptive as always, glanced between the adults with slight concern. Something smells amazing, Brian offered, an awkward attempt at normalcy. Clara's lasagna, I said, watching Sarah's expression soften slightly at the mention of her mother's recipe. I thought we could use some comfort food. Dinner began tensely, with conversation limited to safe topics, the children's school activities, the weather, neighborhood news. I let this continue through the main course, allowing everyone to relax somewhat before addressing the real reason for our gathering. As I served dessert, Clara's apple pie, another family favorite, I gently moved the conversation toward more substantial matters. I imagine you've been wondering about the letter from Robert, I said, looking directly at Sarah and Brian. Sarah set down her fork. Dad, if this is about money, can we please discuss it later? She glanced meaningfully at the children. Actually, I think it's important the children hear this too, I replied. In an age-appropriate way, of course. This is about family values as much as finances. Brian's jaw tightened. Richard, we've had a pleasant evening. Let's not ruin it. I don't intend to ruin anything. I want to clarify my intentions, which I think have been misunderstood. Emma looked up from her pie. Are you talking about Mom saying you're poor, Grandpa? Sarah flushed. Emma, that's not yes. Partly, I answered, honestly, and about some grown-up financial matters between your parents and me. I turned to all 3 children. I want you to know that I'm not poor. I have enough money for everything I need, and many things I want. What's important isn't how much money someone has, but how they treat others and keep their promises. Jake nodded solemnly. Like when I promised to walk Mrs. Peterson's dog when she was sick, and I had to do it even when it was raining. Exactly like that, I smiled. Your parents and I made some promises to each other about money, a long time ago, and now we need to talk about those promises. Sarah's expression was a mixture of embarrassment and anger. Dad, this isn't appropriate. What isn't appropriate? I said gently but firmly. Is treating your father like an ATM for years and then dismissing him once you've decided he's no longer financially useful. Brian started to protest, but I held up my hand. Please, let me finish. This isn't just about the money. It's about respect, gratitude, and the example we're setting. I reached for one of the folders on the sideboard and opened it, revealing photos of Sarah's childhood home, her college graduation, her wedding. I've always supported you, Sarah, emotionally, practically, and yes, financially. I did it out of love, not obligation. When you needed help with the house down payment, I provided it. When Brian's business needed investment, I stepped in. When the kids' school tuition was due and you were short, I covered it. I turned to another folder, this one containing the loan agreements and financial records. But these weren't gifts. They were agreements between adults, with terms we all understood and agreed to. Calling them due isn't about punishing you. It's about restoring balance and respect to our relationship. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. So what? You're going to take our house if we can't pay you back immediately. How is that love, Dad? That's not my intention at all, I said softly. What I want is acknowledgement of the debt, a reasonable repayment plan, and most importantly, restoration of mutual respect. Brian looked skeptical. What kind of repayment plan? I told you, we're cash poor right now with the business expansion. I'm aware. That's why I have a proposal. I slid another document across the table. I've had Robert draw up a formal agreement. The $75,000 house loan and the $50,000 business investment can be consolidated with a 10-year repayment schedule at minimal interest. The $24,000 for school tuition and the smaller amounts can be forgiven entirely. Sarah stared at the paper. Why are you doing this now? Because Grandpa is poor now, so don't ask him for anything. Made me realize how you truly see me. And that needed to change, for all our sakes. Emma looked confused. But Mom, you said we shouldn't ask Grandpa for stuff, because he needed to save his money for medicine and stuff since he's old. Sarah's face went crimson. Emma, that's not exactly medicine. I interrupted, raising an eyebrow. I'm in excellent health, as my last physical confirmed. It was a simplification, Sarah muttered. The kids don't understand complex financial situations. They understand more than you think, I replied. They understand fairness, gratitude, and keeping promises. Those are values your mother and I tried to instill in you. The mention of Clara seemed to hit Sarah hard. She looked down at her plate, then back at me, her expression softening slightly. What exactly do you want, Dad? I want our relationship back, the real one, not the transactional one it's become. I want to be treated as a valued family member, not a financial resource or an embarrassment. I want my grandchildren to know the truth about who I am and what matters to me. And yes, I want you to honor your financial obligations, not because I need the money, but because it's the right thing to do. Brian studied the agreement. These terms are actually more than fair. Of course they are, I said. I'm not trying to create hardship. I'm trying to restore balance. Sarah remained silent, processing. Finally, she spoke quietly. When Mom died, everything changed. You changed. You got so focused on money, on downsizing, on being practical. I was grieving, I said gently. And yes, I reevaluated what mattered most to me. It wasn't the big house or the possessions, it was family, connections, leaving a legacy of values. When I saw how easily you dismissed me once I was no longer opening my wallet at every request, it hurt deeply. The children had been watching this exchange with varying degrees of comprehension. Lily had lost interest and was drawing on her napkin, but Jake and Emma were paying close attention. Is that why you sent the scary letter with the red stamp? Jake asked suddenly. It wasn't meant to be scary, I explained. It was meant to get your parents' attention, to start an important conversation. Are we going to lose our house? Emma asked, her voice small. No, sweetheart, I assured her. That's not what this is about. Your mom and dad just need to keep a promise they made, and I'm going to make it as easy as possible for them to do that. I turned back to Sarah and Brian. The choice is yours. We can move forward with mutual respect and reasonable terms, or you can continue seeing me as either a blank check or a burden. But know that my relationship with my grandchildren is non-negotiable, regardless of your decision." Brian looked at Sarah, then extended his hand to me. "I think we can work with this arrangement, Richard, and I apologize for how things have developed." Sarah took longer, struggling visibly with her pride. Finally, she nodded. "We'll honor the agreement, Dad. And I'm sorry about what I said to the kids, it was wrong." It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start. As if sensing the tension breaking, Lily piped up from her seat. "Can we have more pie now that everyone's not mad anymore?" The unexpected question broke the remaining tension, and for the first time that evening, we all laughed together. As I cut more slices of Clara's apple pie, I felt something shift between USA, small step toward healing. Toward the family we could be again. Later that night, after Sarah, Brian, and the children had gone home, I sat in my quiet living room, reflecting. On the evening, the conversation had been difficult but necessary. The path forward wasn't perfectly clear, but at least we were talking honestly now. I picked up a photo of Clara and me from our 40th anniversary celebration. "You would have handled this more gracefully," I told her image, "but I think we're heading in the right direction now." The house felt less empty somehow, filled with possibility rather than loss. Tomorrow, I would call my grandchildren to arrange our next stargazing session. The healing had begun, and with it, the chance to build something better, a relationship based on genuine love and respect, not financial dependence. As for Sarah and Brian, only time would tell if today's understanding would translate into lasting change. But I had done what needed to be done, not out of vengeance, but out of love, the kind of love that sometimes requires difficult truths and firm boundaries. That night, for the first time in months, I slept peacefully, knowing that whatever happened next, I had taken the first step toward reclaiming not just my financial autonomy, but my place in my family as someone worthy of respect. 3 months passed, bringing changes I hadn't dared hope for. Sarah and Brian had made their first 2 payments on time, adhering strictly to our agreement. More importantly, they had begun including me in family decisions and activities without the underlying current of financial expectation. The grandchildren visited regularly now. Jake and I had established a weekly astronomy night, when weather permitted. Emma brought her books and school projects for my input. Even little Lily had a special routine with me baking cookies together on Sunday afternoons, just as I had done with Sarah when she was small. The most significant change, however, came unexpectedly. One evening, Sarah arrived alone at my condo, carrying a shoebox of old photographs. "I found these when we were cleaning out the attic," she explained as I welcomed her in. "Pictures from when I was growing up. I thought maybe we could look through them together." We sat side by side on the couch, sifting through memories. Sarah's first bicycle, which I had taught her to ride. Family camping trips, holiday celebrations. "We didn't have much back then," Sarah commented, holding a photo of our modest first home. "But I never felt like we were missing anything. Your mother and I made sure of that," I said. "We wanted you to value experiences and relationships more than possessions." Sarah was quiet for a moment. "I think I lost sight of that somewhere along the way. After Mom died, and Brian's business started taking off, it became so easy to equate success with things. It happens," I said gently. "The world pushes us in that direction." She set down the photos and turned to face me directly. "Dad, I need to say something I should have said months ago. I'm truly sorry, not just for what I said to the kids about you being poor, but for how I've treated you these past few years." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. I had hoped for respectful compliance with our financial agreement, but this vulnerability was unexpected. "I started seeing you as a resource instead of my father," she continued. "When you began setting boundaries after Mom died, I resented it instead of respecting it. I told myself you were being stingy or difficult, because that was easier than admitting how entitled I'd become." I reached for her hand. "Thank you for saying that, Sarah. That means more to me than any repayment. The thing is," she said, wiping away a tear, "watching you with the kids these past few months, the telescope nights with Jake, the science projects with Emma, baking with Lily, I realized what really matters. You're giving them what you gave me, you're giving them what you gave me growing up," Sarah continued, her voice soft with realization. "Time, attention, wisdom, things money can't buy. And somewhere along the way, I forgot that was the most valuable gift." I felt a warmth spread through my chest, a healing I hadn't known I needed. We all lose our way sometimes. What matters is finding the path back. She looked down at a photo of herself at 10, proudly holding up a science fair ribbon. Remember how you took the day off work to help me finish that project? You said it wasn't about winning, but about understanding how the world works. I remember. I nodded. You were so determined to build that solar system model completely to scale. And you let me figure it out myself, even though it took forever. She laughed softly. Brian and I have been talking a lot lately about what kind of parents we want to be, what values we want to pass on. That's the most important investment you'll ever make, I said. Sarah met my eyes directly. We've also been talking about your financial help over the years. We've actually been looking at our budget, cutting back on some things. Oh, I tried to keep the surprise from my voice. The pool construction is on hold indefinitely. We've canceled the country club membership, and ... She hesitated. Brian's actually considering scaling back the business expansion to something more manageable. These weren't small changes. They represented a significant shift in priorities. These decisions aren't just about paying you back, Dad, she added, though we are committed to that. It's about modeling the right values for our kids, about understanding the difference between wants and needs. I squeezed her hand. Your mother would be proud of you, Sarah. Tears welled in her eyes. I miss her so much, especially now that I'm starting to see things more clearly. She's still with us in the values she helped instill, I said, in the little things you do with your children that you learned from her. We sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the box of photographs between us bridging past and present. Dad, Sarah said finally, there's something else. We'd like you to join us for Sunday dinners. Every week, not just on special occasions. The kids miss you when you're not around, and so do I. It was such a simple invitation, yet it represented everything I'd hoped for, not just access to my grandchildren, but a genuine desire for my presence in their lives. I'd like that very much, I said. As Sarah gathered her things to leave that evening, she paused at the door. You know, when you sent that letter about the loans, I was so angry. I thought you were being petty or vindictive. And now I think it was one of the most loving things you could have done. She hugged me tightly. Thank you for not giving up on us, Dad. After she left, I sat with the photographs spread around me, evidence of a life well lived, not measured in dollars or possessions, but in moments of connection and growth. The financial agreement with Sarah and Brian was important, but it had always been a means to an end, restoring respect and rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms. I picked up the phone to call Robert and update him on the latest developments. My attorney answered on the second ring. Richard, I was just about to call you. I received the second payment from Sarah and Brian today. Right on schedule, I confirmed. But that's not why I'm calling. I wanted to discuss making some changes to those educational trusts we set up for my grandchildren. What kind of changes? I'd like to add a provision for matching funds. For every dollar Sarah and Brian contribute to the children's education, I'll match it. And I want to establish a separate fund for family experiences, travel, cultural activities, things that build memories together. Robert chuckled. This sounds like your version of a peace treaty. More like an investment in what truly matters, I corrected. Sarah's coming around, Robert. She's remembering the values Clara and I tried to instill. I'm glad to hear it. I'll draw up the amendments to the trusts right away. After we hung up, I walked to my window overlooking the small garden I'd planted last spring. The rosebushes Clara had loved were thriving again after years of neglect. Like my relationship with Sarah, they had needed pruning, cutting away the dead growth to make room for new blossoms. Grandpa is poor now, so don't ask him for anything. Those words had hurt deeply when I'd first heard them, but now I recognized them as the wake-up call we'd all needed. Sometimes the most painful moments lead to the most necessary growth. I smiled, thinking of the coming Sunday dinner with my family, not as the bank of Dad or poor Grandpa, but simply as myself, a man with much to give that had nothing to do with money. The most valuable legacy, after all, isn't found in bank accounts or possessions. It lives in the lessons we teach through both our generosity and our boundaries, and in the respect we earn, not by what we give, but by who we are. That night, I added a new photo to my bedside table, one Jake had taken with my phone during our last telescope night. 3 generations of faces lit by starlight, looking upward together. It wasn't perfect. We still had work to do, truths to speak, trust to rebuild. But we were on the right path now, and that was worth more than all the money in the world.